If you use the experience that you have in Divi 4 to design websites in Divi 5, it will not work. Divi 5 has been built from the ground up and it requires a professional workflow to achieve websites that look professional. In this series of videos, I'll be sharing a professional workflow in designing websites with Divi 5. All right, so in this first episode, I'll be talking about typography. Now, of course, typography is everywhere. But you see, in Divi 4, things used to be a bit different. Now, let me show you what I mean. In Divi 4, our workflow went something like this. We'd go in, add our text module, like that. And then we would come over here now to the design tab. We go into text, and this is where we would go in and choose our font. So we would come over here and then choose the font from here. Well, that is absolutely wrong. You cannot do it that way. It doesn't work. Secondly, we would come over here and choose our text size or our font size. We would go in, add pixels or whatever it is. And then after that, we would come over here to these different screen sizes and also make adjustments based on the text size over here. That is not the way you're supposed to be designing using Divi 5. And also the other thing is, before we would come over here into the text, and this is where we would add our heading. Okay, so for example, we would go in here and then say, okay, this is going to be heading 2. Completely wrong. You cannot do this in Divi 5 workflows anymore. So the question is, what is the right way to do it? Well, first of all, let's address the headings. So if you want to add headings, it comes with its own module. In fact, let me get rid of all this and just add a basic paragraph text. So if you want to add headings in Divi 5, you need to add your heading separately by adding it as a module. And here it is right here. You can just add heading and now it's there on its own. And then you can apply all the changes that you need. So now we have our heading module, we have our paragraph module, okay? So that's how it is in terms of declaring your headers and your footers. Do not do it in this text module here. Do not do that. It doesn't work. The second part now is, and this is very, 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 very important. If you want to add your text sizes and also your font types, then you need to do it in the variable manager, okay? And it is right here. So the first thing you want to do is to come over here to fonts. This is where you're going to declare what font you're using throughout your whole website. So for the headings, for example, you can see I've chosen Poppins. I can just change this to Inter, for example, and you can see there it is updated. And for the body text, perhaps I want that to be Poppins. You change it here. So once you save and apply these variables, okay? And of course, this you can just click it so it goes away. Once you do that, every time you're going to design here, let's say I add another text module, right? You don't need to go in and specify what font it is over here on the design tab under the text. You see here, you don't need to touch that anymore whatsoever because we've declared it over here on the variables. Okay, so that is a huge distinction. Okay, so the next part now is, what about the font sizes? Because if we're not going to be using this, where do we add our font sizes? Well, first of all, in Divi 5, if you want to achieve a professional workflow, you cannot use pixels, REMs, Ms, and so on to set your text sizes. You cannot do that. This is a professional workflow. You cannot do that at all. What you need to do is to find a clamp calculator. For example, here is Chris Burnell. This is a clamp calculator. So you need to go one by one and declare all your fonts and have the size as a what? As a clamp value. For example, here, let's say I want to set the body text of my website. So I'll set my minimum size as 16 pixels. My maximum, in case people have very large screens, I want this to be 18 pixels. Okay. Minimum viewport, that's like the smallest screen size. 500 is fine, but sometimes I use 480. Maximum 1280 is fine because that follows our grids. Okay. And then the root size here is 16. And then what you do is calculate. Boom. So now this value that you can see here is the value that you need to declare as your body font, because when your website when the screen size gets bigger, it will go up to 18 pixels. And then when it gets smaller, it goes down to 16 pixels. But this gap between 16 and 18 is done automatically. It's like in between, there's sort of like an elastic. So as the screen changes, it just does that automatically. Okay, rather than going in manually and setting 16 pixels for this screen, 18 pixels for that screen. No, you do it once and it's done. So over here, again, you need to go to your variable manager. You go to numbers, and this is where you declare it. Now, in my case, I have it here. In fact, you can see I have all these clamp values. Okay, I have all these clamp values. The reason why I have all these clamp values is because I'm using the professional workflow. And it's very important that you do this. So you go in, you add your text, you add all your text sizes, and this will automatically be added over here on when you start selecting your values. Okay, so for example, for my paragraph text, this is the value. You would enter it here and save. If you want to add your headings, you would add heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. You add all your sizes. Of course, the sizes will change based on this. You go in, you change this value, you change the values, and so on. Calculate, you get the value from here. You come back over here, add it. Okay. Now, once everything has been all added, the next step you want to do now is to define the sizes. For example, you see this heading that we have here. If I go to my heading text, you can see it's set to heading 1. Right? But over here, we haven't added all the values. But if I come over here to the top, you can see I've set my heading 1. Okay. And these are the clamp values. So you may be saying, but Mac, where are you getting all these values from? Where the hell are you getting them from? Well, I have a design system to help me achieve this professional workflow. It's called Crafter Pro. I'll leave a link to that in the video description below. So am I saying just buy my design system? No. You can create your own. You can absolutely create your own design system and use that. What I'm saying is the way you design websites using Divi 4 is not the way you're going to be designing websites using Divi 5. So here, as we're designing, you'll see that our body text, if you come over here to the top, I have it defined over here. My headings, they're all defined. So let's say I want to add another heading, and this time it's heading 2. I can just come over here to the top, set this to heading 2, and boom, now I have it. So this design system is a free one because it only has basic features. I've only added 3 headings, but ideally, of course, you want to have 6 headings. So here you can see I can go in and set it up to heading 3, and I'm done with my headings. But if you use the professional version, it has pretty much everything you need, including all the colors, including pretty much everything. But this video is only covering just the typography side of things. Okay, so you need to set up your preset system, and you also need to set up with your fonts with the clamps. And like I said, to do it, you come over here to the variable manager, you come in, you declare all your sizes over here, and then once you declare them, you create presets for them, and that is what you're going to use throughout the whole website. You'll find that no matter what page you design, you're always going to have headings that have all the same sizes. And of course, if you do need to change the heading sizes, it's very easy. You would come over here and change the value on one place, which is here, and then it will just update across the whole website. And this is what makes Divi 5 very, very powerful and even more professional. Right. The other thing as well is, and I just want to recap on this because I've seen a few people asking this question a few times. If you want to add headings, do not add headings over here in your editor, okay? Like that. I know the value is there to add your headings, but do not add it there. Add it by itself with a heading module. This is what you need to do with the fonts. Now, let's say you want it bold. Well, if you select your headings here, or your heading, if you come over here to your heading text, it's fine. You can go in and change this from regular to bold. Okay, and that's fine. Now, if you want to set this as a preset, you can also come over here and say, okay, heading 1 bold. So you can say new preset from current styles, and then you say H1 bold, like that. Now, in my case, I do not use bold a lot. I just take it as it is over here. But of course, if you want to use that, it's fine. So now that I've saved it, you'd come over here, and let's say you want to set this to H1 bold. Boom. There we go. Okay. So you need to make sure that you only have one variable over here as you're designing. So that's what defines it. If you want this one here to be just the normal H1, you can just go ahead and set it to H1 and make sure you get rid of this one. So now we have the normal H1, H1 bold. Now, do you see how easy that is? And if you want to manage all your presets, then you want to come over here to your preset manager, and then you go and then you look for your headings. And here they are. If you want to start off with the bold, you can have it here if that's the one that you mostly use. But if it's not the one that you mostly use, then you drag it all the way down here, and then it becomes H1 bold all the way to the bottom. And once you save this, is it saved? Oops. So once this is done, okay, when you now come over here and you look at the presets, you can see that the order now has been fixed. Now the H1 bold is all the way at the bottom. If you're brand new to Divi, I have a Divi mastery course, and this course will save you hours and hours trying to work out how Divi 5 works. So it's only going for $27. And as we speak, this course has over 1,173 students. Now, I will be adding more lessons and more modules to this. So if you purchase this at $27, I will not charge you any extra going forward. But you need to make sure that you purchase it now before the price goes up. And also, you know, the design system that I was talking about, the pro version, it has its own community, it has its own course. So this is a community of designers who want to design using this workflow that I'm talking about, which I'm calling the professional workflow. It is based on a design system called Krafter Pro. At the moment, it has a 40% discount, so go ahead and purchase it while the price is low. $40 discount, okay? $40 discount. Now, a lot of people have already started using this, and you can see here, it has its own community. So if I come over here to Spaces, you can see here, Krafter Pro has 958 members. This is the professional workflow. If you design with Divi 5 using your principles from Divi 4, you are destined for failure, because Divi 5 gives us all the professional tools that we need for us to design websites that are professional. And I forgot to mention also one very important thing. When you use Clamp, it means that all your websites and all your pages are going to be automatically responsive, which means they are 100% accessible, and they will pass the accessibility tests, which are very, very important when you design websites now. So as you can see here, when I go through these, the size changes. I don't need to go in and adjust these. And just to prove to you that when you use Clamp, you don't have to make any adjustments. If you go over here to the text, or for example, this H1, if you go to heading text, you will notice that here the values are not changing because they have not been added manually. Okay, so you can see there. And if you make the screen smaller, pretty much everything just works perfect. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. If you're not a member of Divi University yet, go ahead and join. It's absolutely free. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.